building brings people to town. And so that, in my opinion, should be part of what they support.
The CAPC's pretty much paying for everything right now, well over $100,000. And that's part of what they are offering to do again, which definitely aids the city. Yes, I have, memories of when we were spending $100,000 for a single act to bring 900 people to town. And if you go back and look at the revenues collected those years, we were marginally 2-3% down. Yet the way the CAPC is operating right now, we're showing double-digit growth. We're 16% above last year to date. So I think what the CAPC is doing right now is benefiting the community, because as the CAPC revenues go, so do the general revenues in the community go. So I think with the new director and the approach that they've taken, that we're showing substantially increased numbers, while the rest of the state and the region is basically in negative territory or no improvement whatsoever. So the CAPC is paying quite a bit of money right now, well over $100,000 a year, and I hope that we can continue with this agreement.
Raphael?
Well, according to their own figures that they gave us in June, as of June, they had spent $906. I'm assuming this did not include any kind of labor costs or anything.
No.
People that have worked there, but $906. And the city at that time, for a half a year, had spent $18,000. That's $18,000. Oh, that's not including $7,200 for insurance. That's $18,000. So, at some point we ought to have a conversation. How much do we want to? At what point do we want to stop? Now we've got the heating coil. It's like everybody can agree that maybe the point of it isn't to make money, but where do you want to stop as far as putting money into it? I think it's a legitimate question.
Hannah?
I would agree with my fellow Ward 1 constituent that matter of fact, I was a on-hands victim, I should say, because I was standing waiting for some of my family to do some shopping and some people, and I was standing in front of the Aud, right where the poster was whenever and I even hesitate to put the name of the trio because I would probably call it erotica, but anyway, that trio was performing and there were people from out of town trying to decide and this was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the day of the program at the Aud, and they turned to me and I said, well, I've got tickets, but I don't know how much they cost. I don't know what time the window's going to open, and they said, well, I guess we'll just go figure out something else to do. So I would say that I would make a motion that in the discussions with the CAPC director that be addressed, and also the amended 2M, what the status of paying the city any profits generated above the CAPC cost of $94,000, where we stand on that before a proposed agreement is brought to the table.
Second.
Which A, please?
2A.
Ms. Lindblad? Did you have?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any further discussion on it? Mr. Raphael, you had your hand up.
No, I was improperly in my hand.
Okay. Oh. No further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mr. DeVito, would you vote?
Aye. I'll let you know when I vote no. You'll be able to hear me.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to move that
Second.
Are we done with this?
Oh,
We just voted on the motion. So. Any further on this before we take a break?
Yes.
Yes.
and I rescind my motion.
Okay.
for break.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I think it's very important that we agree and on a one-year contract just for booking reasons for next year. I can totally go along with a one-year agreement, and I think we should do that as quickly as possible. Not 3 years, then we should have a discussion of where we want to go with this.
Point of clarification.
Yes, sir.
What was the results of the vote?
5-0.
That item is closed, correct?
Since we voted on it, yeah, it is closed.
But for clarification, we didn't agree to a 3-year agreement only. We requested that they look at a multi-year agreement, which could consist of a 1 year plus 2 1-year options, or 1 year plus a 1-year option, or whatever the case might be. I don't think there's any limit as far as 3 years.
Go ahead.
My understanding of your motion was to include 2A specifically.
Excuse me,
Yes.
clarification. I was trying to answer Mr. Raphael's concern about going in and negotiating a 3-year contract.
Okay.
And we had just discussed that we weren't looking at, we opened it up with a vote that it was going to be a multi-year contract as proposed, and then we would be voting on whatever happens after the proposal comes to the table, if I'm not mistaken.
Mr. DeVito?
You know, let the mayor and the CAPC do the contract, come to us with the contract, we'll see what it looks like, and go from there. I hate to put conditions up, any more conditions up front. I mean, you know, it makes their job that much more difficult. Let's see what they come back with, and then go from there.
Okay, we've heard the vote. No further discussion? Okay, then the matter is closed at this point. All right, that moves us to number...
I'm still making a motion.
Oh, okay, for the 10-minute break.
Second.
Made and seconded, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 10-minute break. We'll be back in session. We are up to number 9, discussion of ordinance on the Water and Sewer Committee. Motion to discuss.
So moved.
Second.
Made and seconded. Floor is open. Mr. Raphael.
Yes, I looked at this. I have a little bit of a problem with this. Researching this, the only sewer committee that I could really find anything on was Little Rock. But their committee members are all required to be trained in the field. I don't like the idea of taking 2 city council members and 3
Point of
people.
order.
Yes,
The
sir.
discussion would be appropriate after we've gotten, I think it was left with a review of the city attorney if this was inadequate, recommended changes, if I'm not mistaken. Or is it just general discussion?
If you're asking, is there anything technically wrong with your ordinance? I did not see anything technically wrong with your ordinance. If you're asking whether I think it's a good thing to adopt for the city, I don't think that's my position to say that one way or another. So I think you're ready to move on. As far as I'm concerned, you have a potentially valid document to look at. But whether it's good to do that or not, you need to address that, as I think Mr. Raphael was about to do.
Mr. Raphael?
Okay. I don't like the idea of 2 city council members and 3 people at large, which is the setup I think they have, which know nothing about the most technical department of our city, basically. And the whole 14-235-206 was amended by House Bill 1774 with an emergency clause, and the emergency clause states that the present status regarding the establishment of municipal sewer committees are unclear. I think what happened is the bondholders are the ones that pushed this through, and they wanted some stability in a sewer committee. Or our city has been operating under a sanitary board for a while now, and one of the requests is one of the laws is that you cannot replace that as long as there's indebtedness. So I think it all comes down to money and the bondholders and what they allow you to do. So I think I know what you want to do, but I don't think this is the way of doing it. The council still has ultimate control. If you want a project done, you can bring up an ordinance to do this project, and then you can figure out a way to fund it and a way to manage it. But trying to control the wastewater system of the city when you really don't have a clue doesn't sound like a good idea to me.
Ms. Lindblad?
Would you give me the amendment again, the number I didn't get?
1774.
Amended by 1774?
House Bill 1774. It really amends all of Title 14, Chapter 235. And that was the reason.
2012?
No. 91.
Thank you.
Further? Ms.
What was
Lindblad?
the clarification?
And also-
What was the last I heard? I heard 91-2012. Regards to what?
Of the date. 78th General Assembly.
1991.
Well, the code book is 2012.
This is state statute.
I think one of the first things we probably should have done is invited our Public Works Director here to discuss this. I talked to him, and he didn't seem very positive about this, and he thought that it might jeopardize our NPDES permit, which is National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. It just seems like it's too much for a committee to take on, or a committee that we could put together in this town.
Ms. Lindblad?
I agree with Mr. Raphael. Having been on council before and made trips down to the sewer plant, it is a very, very technical thing. And I think that you really do have to have training to understand what's going on down there. And to put a committee of citizens in charge of it, I think would just be totally ludicrous. I wouldn't want to be on that committee because I don't know anything about it. You know, it's a very technical, you have to be testing the water, you have to be doing all kinds of stuff, and the people that run those plants are very highly trained people. You know, they go through years of training and they're licensed. And I think that if the council has a problem with what's going on down there, I think it would be best for the council to address it directly rather than have a committee of citizens and 2 council members who have no expertise in that area. You know, maybe if it was another area, but I just know from being involved in water issues for a long time that it's a very, very, very technical thing. And I think that it would be a rare citizen who would be qualified enough to even understand it without recommending changes be done. Even though I know it would go through city council, but city council's not qualified in those areas either.
Mr. Rampage.
City council is still able to put together a project, if there's a desired project, put together a project and direct that project, raise funds for that project, and implement that project without a committee. I mean, you can do it if you have the will to do it.
Ms. Linda.
The other thing I'd like to say is I don't think this needs to be one step further away from the council. Excuse me, by setting up a committee. I think, in my opinion, it should be left with the council to deal with this and deal directly with the council to deal directly with Public Works on it.
Any further? Anna.
Well, if we take it off the table, I guess we'll just continue breaking state law then. So it was the first step to try to be in compliance. All the recommendations could have been made and changed after reading the ordinance could have been made in discussion as far as any improvements on it. So that's all I got to say.
Ms. Ballance.
I move to assign this ordinance a number and put it on its first reading
Second.
for discussion.
Is this going to be a roll call? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
2, 3. Okay.
I'll notice.
Any further on this? Ms. Linda.
Yeah, I would like to see us do further research on this and see what other solutions we can come up with. Mr. Raphael mentioned that there were other ones, and I'd like to know what they are.
Okay. No further?
I'd like to see that too, and I would like to see that when we do that, we work with the sanitary board that we have in place right now.
We don't have a sanitary board.
We do have a de facto
It's
sanitary board. I've been operating under it.
it's not an established committee. It's just a committee that's been working together for a long time.
I just have one question.
Okay. Question.
This issue came up because it's required by state law. I don't understand. This table wants to go ahead and discuss this and come up with other alternatives. The way to do it would have been to approve reading the ordinance and making the requested changes. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I would like to request that Mr. Weaver check into that and see if it's illegal. I mean, I do not understand why Little Rock's the only one, why they haven't thrown everybody in Berryville, Huntsville, Green Forest in jail for not having a sewer committee. I think if you go back to 14-235-206 and look at that, where it begins talking about the possibilities of cities and municipalities putting together water and sewer commissions. I think it's not, you know, they're not going to put you in jail for not having this. I mean, it's a law, but it's not a law. And I don't even know that it's a law. But I would like Mr. Weaver to investigate this and you know, And I think this began because Miss Ballance saw the word shall in there, and we determined the word shall means you shall. But if you go back farther, then it's using the word may, so it's like, and since no one seems to obey this law, I'd like to know have a little more clarification on that.
Mr. Weaver, any questions?
If it's the council's wishes.
Our Public Works Director seems adamant that it's not necessary. And
Because he's probably afraid of losing his job.
This wasn't called for.
This ordinance was tailored after Fayetteville. I don't know where Mr. Raphael is coming up with.
Point of order.
Talking to Ms.
You are not.
Mr. You're out of order, Mr. Lindblad.
No, I'm
Point of
not.
order.
Okay. All right.
Chair's
We're back
position.
to you, Mr. Lindblad. I was on your side.
If the chair
Gee
wants
whiz,
to
people.
express his opinion, he needs to step down from the
Well,
chair.
that's not necessarily true.
Yes, it is true.
Not necessarily true.
Yes, it is. Look
I
at
believe you had the floor, sir.
For clarification, this ordinance was drafted almost in line with Fayetteville's. Granted, after being on planning and listening to Mr. Van Tungelen for many years talk about how it's hard to write new ordinances for old towns, and yes, this probably does reek of a little bit of concern. Well, maybe there should be some concern. But to continue discussions of it after we've written an ordinance, sent it to the attorney for review and said it's legal in that concept, and then to vote it down, to assign a number and read it, and then want to discuss it some more, just kind of lacks of inconsistency in the way we've approached ordinances in the past. If it dies at the table after we've read it and we can't come up with reasonable changes, then I can see it. But I mean, this table wants to discuss stuff at the table that should be in a workshop, and now all of a sudden we're taking an ordinance that it just doesn't make sense. I'm sorry.
Mr. Weaver, any input on that? It couldn't be struck down before the ordinance is given a number, can it? As was done?
It can be removed from the discussion.
As was done.
It's not.
Okay.
So it's dead.
So it's there. Okay, we move on to number 10 then. Correction of title resolution number 603, free December parking.
Move to discuss.
Second.
Made and seconded. Floor is open. Yes, sir.
I don't understand what we're trying to change. No, we don't follow any other laws. I don't know why we're worried about what the resolution says.
Ain't that about the truth?
Hang on. Let's get everybody a vent first so they can carry on here. Go ahead.
The body of the resolution was changed, but the title is the old title, and if people just read the title, it will be misleading.
Yes, sir.
Question for the city attorney: if we change the title, we're going to have to reread and pass the resolution?
I think you could probably, since it is a resolution, simply take a vote to amend the title, but properly, yes, you should read the whole thing again if you want to change it. I'm not telling you have to change it or don't have to change it. The body of the ordinance is the law.
Mr. Levin.
I'd move to read resolution number 603 for discussion purposes.
Second.
Made and seconded. Any further discussion? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
None opposed. Let me interject here that we did a kind of a brief summation of how much money we're going to lose if all the metered spaces are used as opposed to the ones on Spring Street and Main Street that line Spring and Main Street, and it's about $5,500 for the month of December. Yes, sir.
Could I ask how much money we lost with the EUREKA-thon or whatever it was called and the car show?
Don't know,
They're
sir.
taking up all the parking spaces?
Don't know, sir. All the parking meters were paid for. All the parking spaces were paid for. What?
By the organization?
By the organization. That was my understanding of why he did it. Ms. Lindblad.
Well, in my opinion, we might lose that much money, but we don't know how much money the city's going to make in tax revenue from people who come here and say, well, we don't have to pay for parking in other towns, and we have to pay here. Well, in my opinion, it used to be that all winter the parking meters didn't go because of the bad weather, and people would have to run out. I mean, even after Christmas, when people come here, they park in the meter, and then they've got to run out on the ice and snow to put more money in the meter. But I think that at least this would be a good gesture, and I think that the city would more than make up for the loss in parking revenue by taxes of people that come here to shop for Christmas, because that's Christmas and Thanksgiving are big holidays. People even stay all the way through January 1st in town. And I think it would be a wonderful gesture. I mean, I had a woman say to me recently, well, I don't have to pay for parking in Berryville. Maybe I'll just keep shopping over there. And people come over here and they do have to pay. So I think it would be an even trade-off for what we would get, and maybe we would even make some more money on city taxes because people are going to come here and shop if we make that little gesture to them.
Okay. That was just a fact for y'all to consider.
Okay.
No opinion one way or the other. Yes, ma'am.
The resolution's already been passed.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm only asking that the title correspond with the body.
Oh, that's on the list.
Ms. Ballance.
May I direct a question toward the city clerk?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. City Clerk, do you have a suggestion for us of how you think this would be, how you think it could read better?
Would it be okay to talk about that after we read it?
Whatever,
Which was the vote?
whatever seems best. Thank you.
Thanks, I feel more comfortable about that.
Okay.
Resolution number 603, a resolution removing the requirement of paying the parking meters on Spring Street and Main Street, and establishing free parking on Spring Street and Main Street from December 1 through December 31, 2012. Whereas the City Council of the City of Eureka Springs, Arkansas, in an effort to promote business for the city during the period of December 1 to December 31, 2012, desires to establish free 2-hour parking at all city-owned meter spaces in Eureka Springs during the period of December 1 through December 31, 2012. Now therefore it be resolved by the City Council of Eureka Springs, Arkansas, that Section 1, free 2-hour parking is established at all city-owned metered spaces in Eureka Springs during the period of December 1 to December 31, 2012.
Any discussion?
So we basically just have to put Spring and Main in both of those spots instead of all city-owned meters.
Take out Spring and Main and have it be all city metered spaces, city-owned metered spaces in the title to correspond with what was agreed upon at the last meeting.
I would move to proceed as the city clerk has delineated.
Second.
Any further discussion? No, we'll vote on it. All in favor? Yes, sir.
Clarification on the new title?
Sure, we want to finish reading it out.
this, or shall I read it to you?
You go ahead and read it if you would.
A resolution removing the requirement of paying the city-owned metered spaces and establishing free parking from December 1 through, 2 hour. Where's 2 hour?
It's not in there.
Section.
Oh, it's not, it wasn't
in the
in
body,
the
but
title
not
in
in
the
the title.
beginning. A resolution removing the requirement of paying the city-owned metered spaces and establishing free parking.
Free 2-hour parking.
Free 2 hour.
I would prefer to have it be free 2 hour parking.
Yes.
From December 1 through December 31, 2012.
At all city spaces. At all
Well,
city.
the city-owned metered spaces is already part of it. Do you want me to repeat it?
That'll work. Or
Yes, please.
Think that?
Repeat it one more time, please.
Okay.
In toto.
A resolution removing the requirement of paying the city-owned metered spaces and establishing free 2 hour parking from December 1 through December 31.
Any further discussion on the title as it is? Been amended to? Is there a second? As amended?
Second.
Okay.
Who did first?
And be a toss-up, pick one.
Okay.
Yeah. When you change the title of the resolution, you have to roll call or voice vote?
wouldn't hurt to be a roll call.
Okay, let's do a roll call then. Just so there's no questions.
Mr. DeVito,
Yes.
Ms. Raphael,
Yes.
Ms. Lindblad,
Yes.
Mr. Pownall,
Yes.
Ms. Ballance.
Yes.
5-0.
Thank you. Okay. Number 11's been postponed. Number 12 is Yellowback Research Committee.
Move to discuss.
Is there a second? Man, second, the floor is open. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Since this has been on the agenda for months and months and months, I make a motion that the Yellow Bag Committee formulate recommended changes and bring them back to the table no later than the first meeting and, excuse me, not the first meeting, the second meeting in October for consideration of presentation to the waste disposal contractor.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
No.
4-1.
That's my understanding. Okay. Move on to number 13, the deer hunt.
Move to discuss.
Second.
Floor is open. Yes, sir.
The motion was for the city attorney to explain his opinion.
As I believe the council members have in hand, I was, when we, at the last meeting, addressed the issue of the deer hunt, there was a discussion at the table at which Mr. Berry stated that the original motion on the 13th, or the first meeting in August, had been originally made by Mr. Pownall in a manner that would have left it open for further debate whether there was to be or not a deer hunt. Mr. Berry, if you go back and review the tape of the first meeting in August, refused to second that motion until it was made in a different form. And it was made at that time, and quite extensive discussion went on from that point on, that this was to approve the deer hunt on the second set of dates. And the vote was taken at the table, that vote passed, and at that point, I think the council, in reality, lost its ability to debate whether there was going to be or not a deer hunt. And it moved on to some discussion of issues of who would be qualified as far as hunters and whether there would be other regulations. But if you go back and you review that first meeting in August, which unfortunately I was unable to attend because of my health, I think it's pretty clear that there was a vote taken at this table, and if you review the comments made by other council members, I think you can see that the issue was pretty clearly decided, and it was accepted by the members of the council. And I tried in my reference to you to give you the citations to the approximate minute and seconds on the video. I hope you've all been able to view the video and look at those. I think I was within a few seconds, I believe, in my listening and trying to correspond that to the time period so you could view why I came to the conclusion. But it appears to me that the deer hunt was approved at the first meeting in August. And if that is the case, the second meeting in August when the vote was taken that failed to approve the deer hunt, I believe that would have been an action that it was beyond the scope that the council had before it at that time, and therefore was an improper vote because it was not brought back up as a motion to reconsider the action of the previous council under the required rules of how to do that. So I think right now you have an approved deer hunt subject to rules and regulations as stipulated.
I know.
I just have a question for the city attorney. No comment regarding the attorney's abilities, but I'd like to know how this came about, that it was even looked into, that you reviewed the tape, because I know your workload sometimes precludes you even doing the things that have been given to you, how this all of a sudden came back to the table to be addressed.
I was concerned at that second meeting in August in regard to the comments that Mr. Barry made, that he believed that the minutes were incorrect. And I was asked, honestly, to review the tape, and I felt it appropriate to review the tape. And I received a emailed copy of the video and was able to listen to it by virtue of Ms. Wilkerson of the mayor's office.
And so my question was, who requested the review?
I was actually asked by multiple people, but the official or the individual who I received it from is the one that last did it. But I felt it was my duty and would have probably done it whether I was asked or not because of the requirement of my office and the confusion at the table. But she was not the only one that requested it to look at it.
Further? Ms. Lindblad?
Yeah, I make a motion to reconsider the deer hunt.
Out of order. We established our parameters of this discussion on the agenda, and it was to review the attorney's thoughts. If Ms. Lindblad wants to make this an agenda item for a future meeting, fine, but we voted on a specific motion to review the city attorney's comments, and that was the extent of it.
Can be added on agenda setting if she desires to. Ms. Ballance?
Another option might be to suspend the rules and add it for now. Just throwing out options.
Mr. DeVito?
It's this kind of 11-hour motion.
Point of order, this is discussion?
Yes,
On
this is
something that's
discussion.
He is discussing right now.
your motion, your attempt at a motion. Council has been adamant in the past, Ms. Ballance, in an earlier thing, would not vote on a nominee because she hadn't had the chance to interview them. We've been very conscientious about allowing 2 weeks for public input. The public is gone right now. If the public had known that we're going to do something like this at this meeting, they surely would have stayed around. This is a disservice to the community that we're supposed to represent. This is not how we're supposed to operate. This goes counter to everything we've tried to do all year to allow the public input. They're all gone. This 11th hour attack on the vote of the public is just totally out of order.
Ms. Lindblad?
Well, it was published in the paper that this item was going to be added to the agenda by the mayor. In at least one of the papers, it already was added to the agenda. So I don't think, and that's why a lot of people were calling me, and that's why they showed up at this meeting, was because they were expecting it was going to be added, and it was published in at least one of the papers that it was on the agenda. So I don't think it's that out of order. And the other thing is, we rarely allow the public, very rarely, to speak on any issue that we're discussing once we get down into our agenda. So I don't think it makes any difference whether the public's here or not, because they probably wouldn't be allowed to speak. We already got everything at council comments. That's not the way I like to do it, but that is the way that it usually has been done. So I think it's a moot point whether the public's here or not.
Mr. DeVito?
The agenda was set before the council comments. If Ms. Lindblad or Ms. Ballance wanted to address this issue, that was the appropriate time to put it on the agenda so that the public would have at least had a few minutes notice that it was going to happen. To do it at the 11th hour, I'm sorry, this is an untoward manner in dealing with an issue that was voted on by the majority of the people in this community.
Mr. Weaver?
I don't want to speak to whether or not you should do this or not do this at this point, but I would like to express something that Mr. Berry asked me to do if it came to this point. I spoke with Mr. Berry at the end of last week after I rendered my opinion. He called me after he had received his copy and spoke with me, and he said that if it came to more than my expression of my opinion and you were going to look at doing something, he would ask that you give him an opportunity to be here. He had already made prior commitments that would not allow him to be here. And he asked that I express those concerns to you, that he would like to be a part of any discussion that you might have.
Mr. Lindblad?
Okay, then I would like to say that in the future, I think that to give information to the newspapers and have them publish an agenda in the paper that has an item on it that we have not put on the agenda should not be done again. Now, whoever put the information out that it was going to be on the agenda, I have been told it was the mayor. But I don't think that things like this should happen in the future, because I know at least one of the papers that publishes our agenda published it with the deer hunt added to it. And it was not added at the table, and that's the proper place for it to be added. So if we're not going to put it on now, even though the public saw it there, then in the future I would like to see no one tell the press they're going to put an item on the agenda so it gets published in the paper for the public until that item is on the agenda at this table.
The item on the agenda was what Mr. Weaver just talked about. It was not discussion whether to or not have it. It was his opinion. That's what it was supposed to be.
In the paper, it just said deer hunt.
That's exactly right. I can't help what goes in the paper.
Well, that seems pretty wide open to me.
Mr. Pownall?
Since we put this back on the agenda for discussion of Mr. Weaver's determination. I feel like my comments are relevant, not asking for a vote, not asking for a change. My biggest concern, there were some very opinionated comments made during public comments from some people that I even in the past have respected their guidance and thoughts and opinions on. I would just like for the record to show that the discussion last time was discussing and leaning towards repealing the voters' vote for the deer hunt in Ordinance 2127 based on comments from the public. I've just in the last 3 days, I've got 23 comments for not having the deer hunt and 8 for having it. And I believe that the intent was to express the concerns of the people and then to be accused of circumventing the voting rights of the public in public forums in this town and at this table, and ask for our resignations if we didn't approve the hunt as voted for. It takes away a right at this table that is allowed because it was requested an opinion from the city attorney that we could, and there's an attorney general decision that says with a 2/3 majority vote of the table, we can repeal legitimately and legally an ordinance that has been brought before the citizenry. So my only concern in not being able to discuss this and take any further action for the next 2 weeks is that I really have some real concern about those that have called threatening people with bodily harm and also saying either vote for it or resign, as some people said during public comments and emails that I've received, that based on the information that we had from the public after this discussion has gone from back in July, as the one lady said, where the mayor said there was going to be a one-day hunt, we were still looking for a date in October, to the myriad of accusations as far as the citizens didn't get what they voted for, et cetera, that I feel that this table is being held in disdain by those that have made those comments inappropriately, and I find great concern that someone is saying, okay, we acted in malfeasance, misfeasance, whatever, when the state statute allows this table with the proper votes to be able to take an action to overturn a citizen referendum. With that being said, okay, where do we stand? Are we back to square one? Are we back to what has been approved at this point in time that goes in line with Mr. Weaver's interpretation that the last vote was improper, where some people were saying it was illegal? Where do we stand at this point in time? So we know going in 2 weeks from tonight, whenever we add the deer hunt to the agenda during agenda setting, what status it's in. What's been approved, what hasn't been approved, where we're going. If it's been approved, then why have another discussion? Based on your...
Are you addressing me?
What's your...
I'm sorry. If you're addressing me, with the mayor's permission,
Yes.
I'll respond. From looking at the tape, and I would greatly encourage all the council members to look at the tape, but and anyone else that has an interest. But if you look at the tape, I think it was clear that in the first meeting in August that the tape was approved for certain dates, and therefore I believe the deer hunt is on as far as what the table approved at that time. You do have the right to withdraw a city referendum by a proper vote, but that's not what was taken at the second meeting. So the second vote was improper. It was simply more of a reconsideration of the first vote than anything else, but the way it was couched was not as a reconsideration. It was not properly brought up as a reconsideration. It was simply taken out of order, and therefore I do not believe that it would count. And I believe a court, if addressed at this time with the issue, would most likely decide that the council approved the deer hunt for the dates as proposed in your motion, Mr. Pownall, at that first meeting for the latter set of dates. You did have a further discussion, if you review the tape, in regard to whether there was other conditions that needed to be placed, and I believe at that time, if memory serves, there was a discussion of whether these bow hunters should be members of certain organizations and what that organization is, as opposed to one set of letters to another, and there was some other discussions as to stipulations of who could and how they could participate. But it appears, from my viewing or my listening to the tape, I did listen to it several times, you will hear that it was pretty much an unequivocal vote to approve the hunt. And if you listen to the comments of the various council members who were made as the vote was discussed and then as the vote was taken and right after the vote, I believe the members of the table at that time considered it was done.
So what you're saying is the first set of dates was properly deleted?
I believe you properly struck the early on period and leaving only the latter period.
So then Robert's Rules of Order, where voting of the positive can bring something back to the table, we just used the wrong verbiage instead of what I was looking for was being able to rediscuss some of the, based on the comments from the citizenry of their concerns with the length of the hunt and when the hunt was going to occur during tourist season, et cetera, et cetera. Are you saying we can no longer discuss the possibility of changing any of the unapproved rules of the Deer Hunt Committee?
I think that the vote that was taken at that first meeting, you need to review the specific language of the approved motion, and that anything approved in that motion is now the law of what the council passed. What was not approved in that motion is still subject to, or what could be changed in the guidelines as set up.
So how would
The dates and the fact that there is to be a hunt during those dates, I believe it clearly are part of that original motion approved at the first meeting in August.
So since the motion and vote was improper, what would be the proper words if we end up having this back on the agenda during agenda setting? Can there be any action taken to amend dates, require certain rules be presented to council, etc.?
I think you can require rules, but as far as the amended dates, I believe if you look at the motion, the dates are specific to the motion that was made and approved.
You got to look at that.
But I would ask that you clearly look at the video for yourself.
I've looked at it. I know what the motion was. My concern is that it was bargained around, so
the motion was called, and when it was called for vote, it was restated. I would suggest looking particularly at what the mayor and the clerk said just before, particularly the clerk read you the motion back, I believe.
yeah, after my words got changed by Mr. Berry. Okay. I just wanted to be clear on whether or not this even warranted going back on the agenda.
Any further? Ms. Ballance.
As long as we're talking about this again, I want to make it very clear. I want to make it very clear to the people who are viewing and to the press that is present that I am 100% in favor of the ballot issue as passed by the citizens. What I am not in favor of is the perversion of that ballot issue and the subversion of that ballot issue by the Deer Committee and the mayor's office. I'm not in favor of that. I'd like to tell you this about that. A couple of meetings ago, we talked about what the ballot issue said. And one of the things the ballot issue says
Point of order, might this be better
is
for
that
council comments?
It-
I mean, the
Floor's still
motion
open,
and
so-
what we were to discuss was the words of the attorney. We're off campaigning now.
I think it would be better left to council comments, but Ms. Ballance has the floor, so. Mr. Pownall?
She needs to rescind the floor first, because I don't want to interrupt her thought process.
so. As I said, I'm 100% in favor of the ballot issue as passed by the people. What I'm not in favor of is what it has become. I believe it was 2 meetings ago we were talking about what the ballot issue actually said, and the ballot issue actually said that the hunt would be within the areas proscribed by Arkansas Game and Fish Commission. At that meeting, we talked about the definition of prescribed, and Mr. DeVito vehemently denied that proscribed means outlawed or prohibited or forbidden.
Point of
And-
order.
And
point of
he
order.
and he
We're far
said that he'd look at.
Ma'am,
he
ma'am,
read
I have to address the
2,
point of order.
And he said,
Stop. I have to address the point of
We're
order.
so far afield from what the motion that we voted on to put on the agenda to where we are right now. I'm sorry, but we're nowhere near discussion of the attorney's opinion.
Okay. Ms. Ballance, you see a need to proceed?
I'll save it for council comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
To justify or defend or usurp the point of order, I think decisions that were made in that last meeting that caused the city attorney to make his determination was driven by administrative forces to review it, not on his own volition, that any of the comments that have been made so far are very relevant to the motion to put it back on the agenda to discuss, because decisions and comments that were made in the last meeting were tied directly to the comments that he said that we were inappropriate. So I think we deserve a time to be able to clarify the comments that were made, and that it's not like we're taking a vote to press on to repeal or approve or change dates or whatever. We're trying to discuss and clarify things that were discussed that are relevant to the city attorney's decisions back to us that the vote was improper.